Welcome back. Our next segment will be the keynote speech, How to Co-Design the New European Bauhaus, Experience from the Nordic Countries. This keynote speech will be given by a senior specialist at the Ministry of Environment of Finland, Matti Kuittinen. Take it away.
Hello everybody and warm greetings from Finland. At this time of the year we hardly have any nights, all it's very light, but as a compensation we have lots of mosquitoes. So this is the context where I'm giving you the presentation from. So I'll be talking about our experience of how we have tried to engage with the stakeholders in the co-design of the new European Bauhaus. And I hope that that will be beneficial also for you when you are doing regional activities. And I hope that we can also learn something from the work that you are doing in your region. I have divided the work in this presentation in 3 parts. First, I will be telling you a little bit of the background where we come to this co-design. Then I'll be showing you some of the results and conclusions from the work that we have done so far. And finally, as I am an architect as well, I take the opportunity to share some of my own reflections on the new European Bauhaus and its development. So this is the frame for my talk. So I'd like to start with the words of a famous Finnish architect, Alvar Aalto. He wrote decades ago that the ultimate goal of the architect is to create a paradise. And of course, this is a lovely starting point for all sorts of things that are related to sustainable and inclusive construction and design and built environment. So as a policy framework, however, it's not hard to figure out what are the main drivers for our societies in Europe at the moment. It's one of the key issues, of course, is the climate change and its reflections to the built environment. Our political goals include achieving carbon neutrality by year 35, and thereafter we are aiming at becoming carbon negative. And for doing this, we are seeking for inspiration, of course, from nature in a pretty similar process as great design and architecture has also done. So we are looking at the natural flows of carbon, how carbon is bound to the woody biomass in Finnish forests, and how it's released back again into the atmosphere in a beautiful balance. And we are concerned that we cannot find such a balance in the built environment. However, we recognize that we should have that sort of balance. And therefore, we are constantly and repeatedly asking the question, how should this influence architecture? But it's, of course, not the only thing that's of concern today. We have tons of questions, big problems, big questions regarding to the demographic structure of the Nordic countries. We have lots of aging population and degrowth in population. We have serious biodiversity loss because the change in climate is hitting hardest here in the north. Our degrees have gone up close to 3 degrees Celsius in 100 years. So we are already beyond 2.8 degrees of global warming, and which means that we hardly have snow in the winter anymore, which has changed the typical landscape of the north. And again, that used to be the inspiration for Nordic artists and designers and artists. And now that landscape, that inspirational landscape, is in very rapid change. Of course, we have problems related to health and living health and living conditions and the quality of construction, and of course the stagnating productivity of construction that is there has been a problem for decades. So there are lots of questions that might be sort of like fuel for new form of architecture and design that's related to the built environment. So therefore, understanding this as a background, we have now jointly with our Nordic neighboring countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland, we have been thinking that what Nordic policies, which policies could influence our architecture and built environment. And of course, climate neutrality. This is one of the things that is a common denominator for all the Nordic countries, and which is exemplified rather often through, for instance, wood construction. Then, of course, we have very high goals for circular economy. It's been seen in the material production and in design principles, and we are very hard at the moment working for the revision of EU's construction products regulation, which, although it sounds super boring, is very pivotal for taking circular economy into the practice of architects and designers. And then we are investing pretty much on digitalizing public services. Our goal is that all services should be primarily digital. And of course, this is seen in the built environment. There is a remarkable development of digital twins and building information modeling used for applying for building permits and so forth. So all of these might perhaps have some relevance for the new European Bauhaus, which is a significant cultural initiative. So therefore, we took these background, the policy initiatives that we have as a background for the co-development of the new European Bauhaus here in the north. So how we did that, we have actually an administrative frame called the Nordic Council of Ministers. So basically all Nordic countries, they share this organization, and which represents all the authorities of the Nordic countries. And Finland is the chairman during this year. So therefore, we invited all our neighboring Nordic countries into this co-design of the new European Bauhaus, and to explore how the ideologies and the goals of the new European Bauhaus might resonate with the existing Nordic policies. So therefore, we have facilitated a series of Nordic co-design webinars and workshops. And in addition to these, there has been lots of like national and regional workshops in addition, but there has been a series of pan-Nordic workshops. And this has been carried out in a collaboration between different ministries from different Nordic countries and different architect and designer associations from different Nordic countries. So far we have had 5 different events, and there are more to come. The events were thematically arranged so that we first had a sort of like Nordic kickoff, and then actually we asked the participants to have their say that what do they want to talk in the next co-design event. And based on the vote results, we then organized the following workshops. So we wanted to do this in the inclusive spirit of the Bauhaus initiative. So far, we have attracted close to 1,700 participants, which can be seen as a very good number in our small countries. We have very small population, as you know. And we have collected hundreds and hundreds of different post-it notes, chat memos, and all different views from these events. And we have been analyzing these pretty much and just published them as a report. So we then arranged all the data that we got from these workshops along the triangle that you all remember from the New European Bauhaus initiative. If these themes were related to aesthetics or inclusion or sustainability. And we could, from all that huge bulk of input, we could identify 22 different categories. And then we divided these categories into their relevance to the different aspects of the Bauhaus. So regarding the aesthetical side, there was lots of expressions of that we need to have new sort of aesthetics and narratives that can support a change in the way that we design, build, maintain, and disassemble the buildings that we have. And then there was lots of things about how the nature-bound aesthetics have to be rethought. As I mentioned already earlier, the Nordic winters are changing very rapidly. For those of you who have had the possibility of visiting our countries in the winter time, maybe in the past you have noticed that there is although it's very dark all the time, the snow in the country gives you a sense of lightness. But now as the snow is melting and we have less and less snow every year, we actually see an increase in the mental problems. It's when it's dark all the time, depression and that sort of things are increasing. And then there is the question of how much artificial light and what's the role of light in outdoor when it's dark has risen into a new sort of level. And then, of course, regarding aesthetics, there is always the discussion about quality over cost. So how much can we invest in something that goes just into something that's in vain, in brackets, if it's just some decorative stuff on top of otherwise pragmatic building project. So then when we look at the sustainability side and what sort of inputs have we classified from there, there are, of course, things that are related to the relationship with nature, biodiversity in cities, and how does the density of cities support these needs. Then there are lots of interesting ideas about local and traditional methods and materials, wood and in special, and other organic materials. Of course, circular economy, zero waste, and about the favoring of retrofitting against demolition are showing up in our data. So actually, when you look at this, these don't feel that these are very novel. These are mostly what's been discussed all over in different organizations and fora in the European context. Then regarding the inclusion side, it appears that there is a strong sentiment that health and well-being, of course, need to be promoted, urban and rural areas to be connected. Learning is identified as an important thing, digitality and participation stand up in the results as well. And then some of the inputs that we got couldn't be actually clearly pointed towards any of the peaks of the triangle, but they were more like cross-cutting themes, such as innovation or a need for establishing a new Nordic academy for promoting the ideals of the new European Bauhaus, and so forth. Then we could also, we tried to analyze the bulk of the material and recognize strong and weak signals. And maybe also unsurprisingly, the emphasis was pretty much on equality and participation. Of course, nature stood up from the data and sustainable solutions. But what we could read between the lines was that understanding of us humans as an important immaterial resource that could possibly partially replace the needs for material consumption could be identified. So then we also ranked all the input in their relation to sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And the results show, again, rather unsurprisingly, that a sustainable development goal number 11 about sustainable cities and communities is the most often referred to. And then we have a smaller dominance of the other sustainable development goals. But I think that it's an interesting exercise when we talk about this new European Bauhaus to try to compare that to other frameworks of sustainability or design or aesthetics, and see that how do these cross compare, because then it's easier to find implementation areas for the new European Bauhaus initiative. Then what did we learn from this exercise? And now I'm reflecting based on the data that we collected, something that maybe might be relevant for you. And again, it would be interesting to hear that how do you see these things in South? I think this cross-European comparison and collaboration would be most beneficial. So we could clearly identify that there are lots of benefits from regional co-design. It is, of course, much more resource efficient than if countries would be doing this on their own, or if universities would be doing this on their own, or any other stakeholders. I think that we got better quality and we were faster in the development than if we would have used our own individual resources instead of collaboration. Of course, the collaboration takes some resources, but it can give you back much more. then I think that it was possible to gain much wider stakeholder engagement through these sort of regional co-design efforts. Then a few things related to policies, because I'm looking these partially through the lenses of the ministry. So there are clear benefits in the regional co-development, because then we can also identify synergies with regional policy development goals. And because often these regional policy development programs have their own individual funding, so it might be possible to identify that how could these funds be used for the European Bauhaus in an efficient way, and maybe to sharpen and to verbalize the goals of those already existing regional development initiatives. So I'm thinking that this European Bauhaus helps to sharpen the goals of the already existing regional policy development forum. And then I think that the coherency of our Nordic voice in European policy development has been strengthened through this through the new European Bauhaus initiative. So that can be understood as a benefit as well. Then it's interesting to see that the feedback from the co-design reinforces development needs of which many are already known. So I think that there are not that many like shocking news that, oh, there is an exceptional novel idea that nobody has ever thought of. But I think this is just fine. It sort of like reinforces that we are pretty well on the map, and we have identified at least several of those important development areas where we would need to work on. And I think this is if there are now like no super exciting novel news from a regional co-design, I don't think that is a reason for a concern. Quite the opposite. Then I think that it's easier to select how to fund and how to channel funds to those areas of co-design that would be taken forward first. So it helps in the practical implementation, at least from my perspective. However, I clearly sense that there is promotion needed for the European Bauhaus. It became very apparent to us that the news about the new European Bauhaus have not at all reached all relevant stakeholder groups. And this applies on all levels. There are several ministries or authorities who have never heard of a new European Bauhaus, and they're very puzzled. What is that thing? And they confuse that with the hardware store with the same name. So is this about selling building products or something? And there are significant gaps in knowledge, especially if we frame the new European Bauhaus so that it's something that's only for artists, designers, and architects. So we have clearly seen that there might be a sort of like very high threshold for those non-artists or non-designers to jump along into this train. And this I see as a clear risk. So there needs to be promotion about the new European Bauhaus. I'm speaking from my experience, of course, that the new European Bauhaus is not only for artistically minded individuals, but it could be something for all to take part in. However, as it is not very clear how the European Bauhaus will take form in the future, it doesn't make it any easier to communicate to all stakeholder groups that, yes, jump into this train, but actually we don't know where the train is going. But it appears to be a nice train. So we just need to trust that it is a trip with a purpose. And now, finally, I would like to take the opportunity of giving my personal reflections as an architect. And these are my own views. These do not represent the views of the Nordic co-design webinars, nor do these represent the views of the Ministry of the Environment or any other organizations. But these are just my personal reflections, because during this spring, I have had a chance and privilege to sit in so many Bauhaus meetings and talk in so many Bauhaus webinars that it has been quite refreshing food for thought. So I would like to suggest 4 points or 4 questions, raise 4 questions for the development of the new European Bauhaus. The first question is that how can we afford to build more? Or should we instead consider downscaling and sort of like a degrowth approach to construction? And this is of course related to the huge material consumption and immense energy consumption of the built environment. And as we all know that the population on this planet is just growing. So it makes no sense to keep on eating more and more of the cake that should serve the whole planet. So I think a serious and fundamental question for all of us who are in working with the built environment is that, can we afford to build more? And where can we afford to build more? And how will that be justified? Then the next question is that should we consider an affair with artificial intelligence? And this is something that gets back 100 years. When the original Bauhaus started, it was a sort of like a semi-scandal that those designers, they dared to have an affair with the industry, and they dared to start designing furniture that was industrially producible, thus turning their back, as it was understood, to traditional arts and crafts sort of movement. So I'm just thinking that, are we now in a position when we should really consider a similar sort of like shocking affair, not with industry at this time, but with artificial intelligence? Because the quality criteria and quantitative criteria that are set for modern construction and for the modern built environment are so difficult and complex and multi-layered that human brains are not just capable of working with that very much longer, at least I would say not with very good results. So I'm wondering what would be the role of artificial intelligence here? And that is a scary but also interesting question. It's easy for us to get dystopic views on this. But then again, if there are algorithms who could help us design better cities and buildings, why shouldn't we start designing those algorithms today? My third question as a personal reflection is that, should we consider leaving farewell to anthropocentric construction culture? So what is the driver that puts us humans in the center of construction and the built environment? Are we only building for humans? As we know that the construction today is consuming 50% of annual raw materials of the planet. And we know that 90% of biodiversity loss is associated to extraction of materials. That puts construction and the design of the built environment at the very core of all biodiversity loss mitigating actions. So should we then think outside of the human box and try to make this planet a livable place for other forms of life as well? And as a last question or comment, I think that the role of empathy cannot be underlined enough. The changes that our planet appears to be facing in the future can be very difficult. They can be very difficult for humans and for non-humans. And for understanding and accepting these changes and also accepting the difficult emotions that these might arise in us and people around us, either in the form of depression or denial or everything in between. I think that calls for empathy. So these 4 points that I make as a personal reflection represent some of the feelings that I have been processing through the co-design phase of the new European Bauhaus here in the north. And again, I'd like to finish my presentation with the same picture that I started with. The ultimate goal of the architect is to create a paradise. Now we just need to think, is the paradise inclusive for all, and who is to decide what sort of paradise? the new European Bauhaus will be working for. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have one question also for the other viewers. Our platform is open for questions if you have any. But if you don't mind, Matti, I'm going to ask you this question now that was sent through. The question is, what would be the role of schools and education in promoting cultural change?
Yes, this is an excellent question. I'm also representing Aalto University, which is an official partner in the European Bauhaus, and I see that this is, at least from my perspective, I see that as a facilitating role. It appears that the youth and the young generation already has a tremendous understanding and sense of urgency about the shift that we need to make. And at least what I'm seeing is that they take that not only as a processual change of doing something in an improved manner, but changing our behavior. So what us, the older generations who are running the schools and running the universities, I think that we should be open-minded and offer a platform for facilitating that sort of change. And at best, it could be a movement that the younger generation is engaged with. So we should make sure that we don't block that movement, but we give frames for it, because I don't think that we necessarily can be an essential and integral part of it, other than enabling it.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any more questions at the moment. So thank you so much for your input and for the very valuable intervention that you had. We will be meeting back up for the afternoon sessions in 2 hours, where we will have 2 roundtables, and we hope to see all of you there very soon.